Five Nights at Freddy's is a series that has changed my life forever, and one that I have dedicated far too much to. When this very channel was first getting off the ground, it was Five Nights at Freddy's that caused a major spike, and it's most definitely the reason that anyone knows who I am. And something I did a lot back in the day was rank the games by different metrics. I ranked them from worst to best, I let you rank them from worst to best, we ranked them by horror, gameplay, but it's been a very long time since we've done anything like that because this channel isn't really committed to FNAF entirely anymore. And since it's been so long, FNAF reference, a lot of new FNAF games have been released and announced. That and my feelings on certain titles and the series in general have changed and evolved. So today we are going to rank every single FNAF game once and for all, until more games keep coming out, I guess. So what's going to be included on this list is every mainline FNAF game as it was intended to be played, every FNAF spin-off not troll game, and Ruin will be included as its own entry for the sake of fairness. This will be the biggest video essay on this channel in a while, so let's get the hell into it.
Have you ever heard of Among Us, Gregory?
Did you know I don't like Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach? Oh, you did? Alright then, my job is done here. I will try to keep this as brief as possible, but Security Breach is my least favorite game just ever, therefore it is handedly my least favorite FNAF game. If you excuse the disastrous, broken, and unfinished state this game was given to us in, which is already too charitable as far as I'm concerned, it is still a fundamentally, horribly put together game. The reason I hate this game so much is because it is a complete and perfect embodiment of everything I never wanted Five Nights at Freddy's to be. I hate its gameplay through and through as a principle, I hate its aesthetic, I hate its contribution to the story. It is so not FNAF. Maybe now it feels like FNAF 3 years later that we've gotten used to this game's existence, but when this came out, this was not FNAF at all, and it was exactly what I didn't want FNAF to ever turn into. Not only does it differ so much from what I love about FNAF, it doesn't do it well. There are other games on the list that are vastly different from what I would normally expect from FNAF, but Security Breach simply didn't do anything it tried to do well. It's kind of a stealth game, but the stealth mechanics are fundamentally pointless. It's kind of an adventure game, but it's considerably boring roaming around a large location. It's by all accounts a free roam game, but there is no incentive to explore, and it gets exhausting trying to do so. And there are ideas on display that I think work in theory or had the potential to be decent, but were simply designed terribly. There are a lot of games in this series, and otherwise, that I didn't like but have grown to appreciate more with time. But this one genuinely only gets worse. For example, I always said the daycare attendant sequence isn't that bad and is easily the best part of the game. And sure, it's still the best part of the game, but it's also so bad. Because Moon will prioritize distractions over you no matter what, so just knock over every stack of shit in the room and then do your task and there's literally no threat. It will take him forever to be back on the move. And don't get me wrong, there are elements of Security Breach I like in isolation. There are some characters I really like, there are some concepts I can appreciate, and the music is really good. But as a complete package, this is literally my least favorite piece of media, and it represents the lowest point in this series from my point of view. I genuinely do not like talking about this game. If you enjoy it, I think that's great. I am happy that people can enjoy things that I can't, because that's just a little bit more joy in the world, and it means the effort put in to create this project wasn't wasted. But I get truly miserable when I talk about it, or even think about it, so let's move on as fast as possible.
Space S-P Space.
Freddy in Space 2 is a game made for charity, and also gave us Freddy Fazbear, but with a massive cock. And those are both beautiful things, however this isn't a particularly good game. I can't consider it terrible, as far as being a very simple, kinda old school 2D platformer. It's not too bad, but the main flaw with this game is just how frustrating it is to control, which is a pretty significant part of making an enjoyable platformer. I also don't really like the art style of this game. I forget if it's Pinky Pills or Lady Fizzy, and I don't care enough to look it up, but although this art style may be decent for other things in another context, I don't like the look of this game. It feels cheap. There are some funny bits, there are some character designs I find mildly entertaining, but this is kind of just a bland and forgettable spin-off in my opinion. I have really nothing else to say about it. I'd rather just move on.
Your feelings for her are not real.
They are real to me!
Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery is such a fascinating game because part of me thinks it's overhated, but I also don't really like it at all. I think the reason I don't understand the hate of this game is because it seems to be basically entirely based on microtransactions. But, fun fact, gamers, if you don't want to buy something, you can just not. The microtransactions in this game have really nothing to do with my disliking of it. I just simply think FNAF AR is pretty boring, and its novelty wears off after just a little bit of playtime. I feel this same way about Pokemon Go, and I'd even say this is a bit better than Pokemon Go. It's kinda cool that I can see the FNAF cast and all these wacky versions of them in my house and zap them and collect them, but this is not something I will do for very long. Something I have to give this game credit for, though, is how high quality the models are. With this game coming out before Security Breach, I am confident in saying this game provided the highest quality official FNAF models available at the time. The skins in this game can also be unnecessarily funny, like with American Freddy, whom I've said very inappropriate things about. FNAF AR is a pretty cool idea that's pretty cool to experience for 5 minutes, but it's pretty forgettable and nothing more than that. It's so forgettable that its dev team forgot about it for years and then decided to promptly kill it in cold blood. You can't even play this game anymore. It's not terrible, but nothing about it is very good, which is exactly how I feel about this next game. Can we please stop pretending Help Wanted 1 was ever good now that the sequel is out? I have explained in such great detail why this game is jank that distracts all of you fuckers by jingling keys in front of your face, and no one has ever provided to me a good retort to any argument I've ever made. I do not like Help Wanted 1, and I will explain why as efficiently as possible. We'll start off by talking about the remake of older FNAF games, which is a sizable amount of the game. The old FNAF games by Scott Cawthon are point and click. The only reason they function to any degree is because you can only complete one action at a time. Imagine if in FNAF 1 you could use the doors whilst looking at the camera, or if in FNAF 2 you could flash the hallway whilst winding up the music box, or if in FNAF 3 you could reset systems whilst using the camera system. That would eliminate any challenge from the games. Well, you don't need to imagine it anymore, because that's how those games work in FNAF VR. By giving the player in FNAF 1 to 3 two hands and the ability to complete two actions at once, you destroy the gameplay fundamentally. FNAF 1 to 3 in this game are completely obsolete because they are in a format that makes them brain dead easy. You could only lose in these games if you didn't have arms. Then you have all the parts and service games. I'll admit these are kind of cool, but I wish there was a different approach in making them more interesting, challenging, and scary. Because these are just levels where you are told exactly what to do and how to do it. If you simply follow the instructions that Andy Field loudly and clearly tells directly to you, you're going to succeed without much effort. Although we'll get into this much later, it's worth mentioning that this is one of the many faults changed in FNAF VR. There are obstacles interfering with your progress in parts and service like minigames. I just wanted to mention that because for some reason, people find it strange that I really like FNAF VR 2, but don't like FNAF VR 1. Dark Rooms is a large part of the game that just consists of two minigames from FNAF 4 that I never really cared to play again, Plush Babies, which no one seems to like, though I will say it is literally the only level we've discussed that isn't extremely easy, and then one of the lamest levels in Sister Location. We've covered 5 of the major sections that make up this game, and nothing is really worth a damn. Night Terrors is a bit better than the rest of the game. The Funtime Freddy one doesn't break every single time anymore. The Nightmare On one is kinda cool, I like the voice lines that make it a bit spooky. The Circus Baby one is kinda just a waste of time. It's literally a game of peekaboo. I really don't know how you can play this and call it the best FNAF game. And then there's the Fredbear one, which is just the FNAF 4 boss, so I guess it's alright, but it sure as hell didn't do anything to be especially interesting. Vent Repair is the one section in base game that I think is just good. It's still not very challenging, but it's the first time in the game that there's creativity in the presentation, and that goes a long way. This also applies to all of the content in Curse of Dreadbear, the additional DLC. This really did a lot to make the overall game better. It's crazy how much more fun and unique this material is compared to the base game, especially considering it came out the same year. You may have noticed we've talked about Help Wanted for for a pretty long time, relatively speaking, and I think that's why people think they like it so much. This game is big. Every FNAF game prior to Help Wanted 1 was a straightforward, simple point-and-click game made by one guy. There wasn't a lot of content, and they didn't appear to be spectacular. But then this game came out and had most of that existing material and more, which sounds incredible. But trust me, bigger is not always better. This game is fundamentally so flawed, and most of its content falls flat if you just take a single second to break it down. It's also really ugly. Why does this game look like complete shit? This is far from the worst game I have ever played. In fact, I don't even hate it by any means. I just don't understand how people like it so much when I see so little redeeming quality.
You're not Gregory. What are you?
Ruin is such a major improvement from the base game of Security Breach, and it actually has a lot of great qualities. It's also just boring. This is such a boring critique, but the truth is, I just find Ruin pretty boring. I understand that FNAF is kind of about doing the same shit over and over again. I don't doubt the decision to incorporate that into this game was partially to please people like me in that regard, but I just did not have fun constantly doing that deactivating security nodes shtick. The puzzles and mechanics built around it just didn't appeal to me, and I found myself getting drowsy getting through the game on all of my playthroughs. With that being said, this game's contribution to the story and the way it tells its story is what makes it pretty cool in my opinion. This game actually has a cool and likable protagonist, the game tells a story through the environment which is intriguing and unique, and this game finally introduced a character that everybody had been impatiently waiting to see in the games. This stuff doesn't excite me as much as it would someone that's still super invested in the franchise, reading the books, etc., but it's still just satisfying to see some growth and evolution in a series that had felt pretty stale and irritating for a while. I don't like this game very much, but I also don't dislike it very much. It's not a game that I like to replay, but it's a game that I have plenty to appreciate about.
How are you today? It is still pretty good. Bon, go get them.
Freddy in Space 3, Chica in Space. Yes, I put this game this high on the list. Sue me. Freddy in Space 3 is just so fucking funny. I don't need the game to be fun or satisfying to play and control if I get a lot of entertainment out of it. And man, I get so much entertainment out of this bitch. Anime Bonnie and Love Taste Toy Chica are canon to FNAF. I don't need to explain why this game is goated any further than that. Buff Helpy is in this bitch. The fucked up Chica mask is here. German Funtime Freddy is here. This game is simply incredible.
Thank you for selecting Exotic Butters.
We have finally arrived at a mainline Scott Cawthon game with the next entry, Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. I don't dislike this game nearly as much as a lot of people in the community, but it is certainly one I've just never been all that enthusiastic about. But I will start with what I do like about the game. The sci-fi aesthetic of this game is quite pretty, and I think it's clear what Scott's vision was for the game, and I'd say it came through well in the end. The cast of characters in this game are very iconic and have some outstanding moments in this game. Their jump scares are creative and frightening, and there are sequences that are fun and or scary. Funtime Freddy's Breaker sequence is a prime example of old school FNAF gameplay, and Ennard Night is arguably the best FNAF boss fight to this day. It's a pain in the ass to access, but the precise movements required to beat this night makes it so thrilling and satisfying to beat. With that being said though, none of that changes the fact that so much of this game is essentially a slideshow where you just wait around for things to happen. There are sequences with gameplay that isn't even really gameplay, like with Bidybab at the start of the game. A lot of the gameplay is walking forward, like in the vents, Bellora's Gallery, and Funtime Auditorium. And a lot of the game is literally just waiting, while Baby is giving a monologue that in hindsight isn't really important. Checking the lights to see either animatronics or some dead people. More listening to Circus Baby. A lot of this game is just talking. I think plenty of this game is interesting and there are parts that are fun, but the game in general is considerably boring and weirdly uneventful. However, a big savior for this game is the custom night. This is one of the most refined custom nights for any FNAF game because it's basically completely skill-based. It does not rely on arbitrary luck. It's fun and very replayable. The cast of characters is pretty strange though. Sister Location is not at all a bad game in my humble opinion, but it's very much not a standout in the FNAF franchise in my book.
Oh, a lake. Oh, I'm about to swimmity swim.
FNAF World, or as MatPat would call it, the pimply-faced puberty of FNAF. I think version 1 of this game is considerably mid, but as it stands now, I think this is a very fun and cute game. The sheer amount of content in this stupid game is genuinely shocking. All the minigames, the unlockable characters, the bugs, the massive map, the great OST, the amount of endings, this game is just surprisingly big. And this is a case where bigger is better. I love the variety in the enemies in this game. The most basic enemies in this game are such basic bullshit, but for some reason, they are just so memorable and make this world so fun to experience. I also love the moves of the characters. They are typically generic FNAF shit, but at least they actually feel like FNAF shit. FNAF World feels more like FNAF than Security Breach. Alright, that's the last time I'll ever mention Security Breach, I apologize. I feel like people took this game too seriously when it came out, and somehow I still think people take it too seriously. I think this game is aware that it's just dumb fun, and what makes it enjoyable is that it is just dumb fun that knows that it's dumb fun. I like the goofy jokes and the bright colors and the laid-back gameplay. I just find this game pretty goddamn fun to come back to.
Life goes on. Well, for everyone else, life goes on. Not for you. You're dead.
Ultimate Custom Night is a very underrated FNAF game in my opinion for one very clear but underspoken reason. It is so impressive that this game even functions. Scott Cawthon is by no means a great developer, so the fact that he managed to make this chaotic FNAF sandbox with this many characters, this many mechanics, visuals, sounds, and features actually work is shocking and so cool. If you like the old school point and click FNAF gameplay to any extent, you'll get some enjoyment out of this game. It's just a really fun challenge to see how many points you can acquire and how many characters with unique mechanics you can take on at one time. This is a game I have sunk quite a few hours into just to experiment with all the different combinations of characters. Not to mention there's a pretty decent list of preset challenges that you can tackle one by one, and that alone takes quite a long time for a new player. Ultimate Custom Night isn't a great game, it definitely doesn't feel very special. Like, there's very little that's distinct about this game aside from just the fact that it has a lot of shit. There's some cool Easter eggs, but there's no major lore drops or standout character moments. It's also not the prettiest game. In order to make this game function, a lot of the jump scares were reduced to shaking PNGs, and there are very few animations. But all things considered, you could do a lot worse than Ultimate Custom Night. It's very easy to come back to, and it's very easy to have a fun time with.
Father, do you know what you climbing through the vents reminds me of?
What, Michael?
Among Us.
Five Nights at Freddy's 3, one of the most anticipated games I have ever experienced in my lifetime. Despite the overwhelming hype surrounding this game's release, this is a bit of a contentious one in the community. This is one that people seem to either love or hate, and it's one people will attack or defend with their lives. I am somewhere in between, but I'm definitely closer to loving it. This is just not a game I get much enjoyment out of revisiting. I don't really get any fun out of the gameplay, and its aesthetic has never done it for me. I weirdly think this game is aesthetically perfect, yet I don't like it, because I think it's exactly what it should be from a story perspective, but I also find it kind of unappealing to look at. But the story elements of FNAF 3 and what it stands for and what it provides is enough for me to look at this game and be like, I like you. Springtrap is just such a cool character, and the way this whole game essentially acts as a boss fight against him is just so cool. And the minigames in this game are phenomenal and surprisingly artistic, not to mention the fascinating and slightly frustrating way of accessing those minigames to get the truly good ending. I just love the structure of this game, even if I'm not crazy about actually playing it. Again, it's like a boss fight against Springtrap that ramps up in difficulty whilst telling a story in between the nights through the minigames. And it all concludes with the reveal that Purple Guy from FNAF 2 is Springtrap. We take for granted how cool this moment is now that it's been almost a decade. In FNAF 2, which was about 5 months before this, we see scenes of the victims of the missing children's incident being killed by this mysterious purple figure. Then in FNAF 3, we can only be killed by this decrepit bunny creature that we don't know or understand anything about, but we have to defend ourselves against him for 5 nights. Then, at the end of it all, it's revealed to us that we have been face to face with the titular killer of the series this entire time. This is arguably the rawest shit we've experienced in the FNAF series. FNAF 3 isn't a game I love, but it's one I love so much about, and will forever appreciate it for changing up the series as much as it did, and in the way that it did.
Hey, this isn't water. This is gas.
FNAF 6, aka Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, is possibly even more contentious than FNAF 3. I know FNAF 6 isn't even half as good as it theoretically could have been, but I just cannot pretend I don't love so much about the content of this game. I know there's not too much of it, and it could have been much more intuitive, but I just really like the pizzeria gameplay. I like playing all these random bullshit little minigames, it just really scratches my mentally ill baby brain. And I just like deciding what's going to be in my pizzeria and making it look how I want it to look and placing things where I want them to go. Not to mention that some of these minigames are genuinely fun. The shoot 'em up game on the rocket ride machine thing is a pretty decent cute little game to play. I also simply don't hate the night sections of the game, as much as other people at least. They're not very fun and they feel a bit bullshit, but I can confidently say these are some of the scariest nights in the series. The way the room is just filled with white noise until you get jump scared is just so effective and still gets me to this day, despite the fact the jump scares don't even look good, like, at all. And man, the Easter eggs and lore in this game are some of my absolute favorites. The security puppet minigame that showcases Charlotte's death is one of the most intriguing, haunting moments in the series, and that final cutscene just hits so unspeakably hard. Henry's monologue is handedly the greatest piece of writing in the franchise, and the cool and calm performance of it alongside the booming music with the visuals just creates the uttermost perfect scene that concludes a devastating series of events. I love this fucking ending. I understand how imperfect Pizzeria Simulator is, but there's just something so special about it to me, and I can't help but really appreciate it.
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.
The freakish Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is straight up one of the only FNAF games that has actually good gameplay. Look, I love these games as much as the next autistic queer person, but damn near all of them are fundamentally poorly made games. But the rhythm and smoothness of FNAF 4's gameplay is genuinely fantastic. I really enjoy the point-and-click gameplay of the older FNAF games, but none of them compare to the satisfaction of FNAF 4. The way you have to bounce between 5 different points of the room and moderate them very closely is so goddamn cool. And I know some people don't like how over-the-top the nightmare designs are, or how much this game focuses on just scaring you, but I am not one of those people. I love how this game tries to scare you with ear-piercing jump scares, Freddy Kruegerish design philosophy, and utterly bone-chilling atmosphere. This game is legitimately spooky, and I love that about it. And although I think this game's lore impacted the overall FNAF lore in a negative way, I enjoy this game's lore within a box. You see what I did there? Did you see what I did there? The moment of the Bite of 83 is genuinely unforgettable, and I love the way it was executed. And the Night 6 ending features one of the most gorgeous songs in the whole franchise, with legitimately haunting dialogue. And the hottest take of the video, I love the box. I know it's stupid, but I just treat the box as a simple icon of mystery, and I respect it for that. FNAF 4 is genuinely fun, genuinely entertaining, and genuinely scary. I couldn't ask for more than that.
I'm an idiot!
You're an idiot.
FNAF Help Wanted 2 is how you should do a VR FNAF game, as far as I'm concerned. This game is beautiful. The quality of the models and the animations is simply fantastic. And this game is just oozing with charm and creativity. The minigames in this one are just so much more distinct and unique than in the first. They're so much more different from copy and pasting a point-and-click game into a VR format. They feel like they were intentionally designed with the capabilities of VR in mind. I love the arts and crafts and salon minigames because they're so cute and embrace some of the silliness of the FNAF series in a truly creative way. The Fazcade minigames are full of fun and actually challenging arcade-style games. My personal favorite is definitely DJ Music Time with the massive DJ Music Man. The visuals are incredible, and I love having a music-based minigame with a pretty creative puzzle. The first aid minigames where you have to perform fucking surgery on Helpy whilst fending off FNAF characters is so goddamn perfect. There's a level of challenge where the threat is actually threatening, it's unspeakably funny having to perform surgery on Helpy, and it's just so much fun to play. This feels like a classic FNAF game. It's basically FNAF 6, I guess, but it feels classic and new at the same time, and it's so fun to play. I also love the minigames of preparing and serving food. They feel like a job simulator, and I just find them very cute and satisfying. I'd say this game's shortcomings are way too fucking many Fizzy Faz levels, and also the sister location games are just kind of whatever. They're a lot better than the remakes in VR1, mostly because they are more visually appealing, but gameplay-wise, they're still forgettable. It's crazy how much of an improvement VR2 is from VR1 in just about every way. The games are actually creative and unique, they are so fun to play, the game looks beautiful, and the FNAF story progresses in a natural and respectable way. I didn't even rant about how Help Wanted 1's lore and story is so disgustingly grotesque Scott should still be ashamed of himself to this day, but this one is so much nicer. FNAF Help Wanted 2 is an absolute banger.
That's right, Oswald. I had sexual intercourse with your mother.
What a shocking, borderline masterpiece FNAF Into the Pit turned out to be. Based on the classic FNAF short story by the same name, FNAF Into the Pit is a stunning, distinct game in the series created by Mega Cat Studios. First of all, the pixel art in this game is so outrageously amazing. The animations are bafflingly fluid and get so much emotion out of the player. The animations of Spring Bonnie, or whatever you want to call the character, are so freakish and it's terrifying. This is such a unique style for the Five Nights at Freddy's series, and I hope we get to see more of it. Into the Pit is also legitimately scary. It really manages to immerse you into the perspective of the protagonist, and it makes you feel isolated and afraid. The stealth-based gameplay also makes Spring Bonnie such a terrifying threat. The jump scare of accidentally encountering him, or him reaching your location, is shocking. The structure of the game is also phenomenal. The way it actually takes place over 5 nights and has you go through a normal routine. Normally in a 5 nights game, you just experience the night or day for some reason, or only a single night. This series lies to you a lot, but in Into the Pit, the game actually showcases and has the player experience the full week. It's interesting and makes the game feel more real, which is impressive when the premise relies on a time-traveling ball pit. FNAF Into the Pit literally just got everything right. It's terrifying, it looks incredible, it's fun to replay, and there's never a moment that isn't captivating. It's genuinely phenomenal.
I'm just trying to get my hands on his sweet, succulent AA batteries.
I'm sorry, I know this is the take that none of you wanted me to stand by, but I think Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is legitimately the perfect encapsulation of what makes FNAF a special franchise that's worthwhile. I'll start by talking about the gameplay because that's somewhat of an elephant in the room. The gameplay isn't very good, and it's overly repetitive, and it's a bit lame that so many characters do the same thing. But I just have to say, I find it weird that talking about FNAF 2 is the only time that we pretend FNAF has ever had good gameplay. The only FNAF games you can argue have good gameplay without sounding like a fucking idiot are FNAF 4, Help Wanted 2, and Into the Pit. Gameplay is simply not the only thing we analyze when looking at a video game. And besides, FNAF 2 is far from my least favorite FNAF game from a gameplay perspective. I would much rather test my reaction time and follow the rhythm of FNAF 2 than replay FNAF 3 or FNAF 6. It's kinda satisfying repeating the patterns in FNAF 2 and testing how fast you can react to the many threats that are coming your way. But what I really love about FNAF 2 is just how it literally does the best at everything outside of the core gameplay. The minigames in FNAF 2 tell the story of what happened in such a fascinatingly cryptic way. It was borderline revolutionary. The Take Cake minigame, Give Gifts, Save Them, all tell such a gritty tale in an unironically groundbreaking way. Not to mention, the lore reveals in this game were so shocking at the time, and are to this day some of the most exciting moments the series has ever offered. Playing this game at launch, and then finding out in real time that it was a prequel, was so baffling and interesting. Then seeing the purple guy for the first time was crazy, and hearing about Fredbear's family diner and a suit in the back room made theorizing and thinking about the game so fucking fun. That's without even mentioning that FNAF 2 handedly has the best cast of characters in a FNAF game. The toys, the Wizards, the puppet, Mangle, BB, the shadows, all of that plus the introduction of Purple Guy and the return of Phone Guy makes for such a thrilling experience where every moment, regardless of how repetitive the game is still exciting. I don't care that FNAF 2 is such a flawed and imperfect game, I still see it as a perfect representation of this series and what makes it truly great. We have finally reached the end of the video, and I think the best FNAF game to this day is Five Nights at Freddy's. One word: atmosphere. The atmosphere of the first Five Nights at Freddy's is just a level of quality that nothing else in the series has ever touched. The feeling of dread, the feeling of despair, the feeling of the death of childhood wonder is also palpable and prominent. Scott Cawthon has said before, when asked by Daka what he would change about the game, that he wouldn't change anything about it, and described it as the perfect mix of ingredients. And I just couldn't agree more. Whether he got lucky or he truly is a genius, Scott just had the perfect blend of disturbing sound effects, bizarre visuals, and an instantly iconic cast of characters, plus the perfect amount and quality of Easter eggs, and a format and structure that's often imitated but never duplicated. This isn't a brilliant video game. The mechanics are bare bones, there's not much of a point in coming back to it very often, and you can piece together a perfect strategy in a timely manner. But this game is a brilliant horror experience that does exactly what it needs to do, and has changed the horror genre and media for the rest of time. I love this game. I will always love this game. I have always loved this game. It's so special. There's nothing like it, and there never will be. It's truly phenomenal what this game is, what it has done, and what it continues to do. And as we finally come to a close, that is my definitive and likely final ranking of every single Five Nights at Freddy's game. I don't even know how to end this video after how long it's been. I feel like I got everything out of my system with the FNAF anniversary and then this video. Five Nights at Freddy's is very special to me, and it's a series I've had a tumultuous relationship with during all its highs and lows, but my love for it definitely still remains. But as I've said before, I don't like making videos about it as much anymore because I don't really have a desire to be on the community side of things these days. However, I will continue to make the occasional FNAF video because it can still be very fun. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this very long Freddy Fabber video. If you want to support the channel further, you can by becoming a member for less than $5 a month. But if you can't do that, liking the video, subscribing, and commenting down below helps out plenty as well. And also, click the link in the description that goes to the editor of this video, Miri's channel. They do some really great music over there, and they help me a lot on this channel. So please go show them some support as well. That's going to be all from me. Thank you guys so much again, and I'll see you guys later.